Is this great or what? We have the theme music, and it won't shut up.
We'll just have to turn the volume all the way down. Welcome, everybody. This
Hello,
is
friends, lovers. Oh, that's our 5 minutes intro. Excuse me. Hello, you good people, and welcome to Life on Earth. Oh, wait, this is the weekly objective. Welcome to the weekly, except that would have been karaoke. We should have had Jonathan Honig doing karaoke at the beginning. He could have been Total Eclipse of the Heart, you know, as Bonnie Tyler.
Yeah.
Hello, you good people, and welcome to 3 in 1. Today is Sunday, April 3rd, 2022, and we are live before a live studio audience. Well, a live audience.
Everybody clap.
In London, England. London, England, not London, Ontario, which wouldn't have been much of a drive from our studio.
And we do have friends there, by the way.
We do have Canadian ones. Well, I had to mention it. We have so many friends in Canada. Hello, you good people, too. And this is the Ayn Rand Center UK's The Weekly Objective and Life on Earth with Robert and Amy Nasir and 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir and every other show we've ever done, all wrapped up 3 in 1 into one intellectual, delicious burrito for you to consume and enjoy. And we use that wrap-up metaphor because we are wrapping up a week of ARC events in conjunction with the Ayn Rand Institute weekend events. It has been an amazing week. Did everybody have a great time? Yeah. So Amy, how did you enjoy your week?
Well, we saw Stonehenge and little children dancing next to it.
We did see Stonehenge. Yes, we did.
We saw the beautiful reenactment site of the Windsor Castle.
That's true.
And then we saw the beautiful, beautiful town of Bath, which is just in the south of the Cotswolds, and it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. It's basically homes in a valley, and they have this the original Roman bath.
And they wouldn't
house.
let us bathe.
No, I did sneak a little.
You're not supposed to touch
there.
the water. Now you've just said on a public podcast
I'm
all over the
going to be
internet
arrested.
that you broke, busted. We're going to get thrown out of England.
Customs
We really
will
are
notice.
in England.
Yeah.
Amazing. Now, unlike our usual staid, grim, serious discussions, today we are joined by a live audience, any member of which is clearly the most intelligent person in the room. But I'm going to do my best to keep up with these amazing people. This week, the Ayn Rand Center UK has been extra UK, and we are gathered in London, England, for the Ayn Rand Institute and Ayn
Rand Institute.
Yeah, I need that bottle of water they gave me, and the Ayn Rand Center UK's week in. You speak for a minute. Give me the bottle of water.
Yeah. This is the Ayn Rand Center UK weekly objective, and as a newcomer has come.
I should just read from my notes, and I won't get tongue-tied. Actually, I hate reading from notes. This week, as the week wraps up, or I should say the week comes to a climax. I don't get any laughter. You're right. I mentioned earlier that my life goal, we've been figuring out life goals this week. If you've been in Tal Safani's happiness team or heard his wrap-up lecture, you got to figure out what your top life goal is and achieve it.
Yeah, it's your spotlight value.
Yeah, my top life goal is to be as funny or funnier than Rucka. Well, we'll see how that works out. But apropos of the London, England location, today's episode is named for a song by the British singer-songwriter Donovan, entitled First There Is a Mountain. Now, anybody my age or older might remember that charming hippy-dippy song, First There Is a Mountain, by the singer Donovan. The lyrics are only 4 lines. It's like a chant. And one of the lines is repeated throughout the song. First there is a mountain. Then there is no mountain. Then there is.
Now,
now, if you're at the conference, many of you know, earlier in the conference, Gina Gorlin, psychologist extraordinaire who's building the builder's paradigm. If you're not on her Substack, do a search. It's easy to find. Gina, G-E-N-A, Gorlin. And she used the metaphor of the Zen master, contrasted with the drill sergeant and the ideal, which is the builder, the Howard Rourke. The song lyric was inspired by a literal Zen master, King Duan Wei Jin, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing nowhere near right. But in the book Essays on Zen Buddhism, he wrote, "Before I had studied Zhan, or Zen, for 30 years, I saw mountains as mountains and rivers as rivers. When I arrived at a more intimate knowledge, I came to a point where I saw that mountains are not mountains and rivers are not rivers. But now I have got to its very substance. I am at rest. For it's just that I see once again mountains as mountains and rivers once again as rivers." Now, since this is an objectivist weekend, a weekend of reason, it might seem odd or even absurd unless you've studied Leonard Peikoff's spiral theory of knowledge. Do you find this odd, this quote at an objectivist conference?
Well, of course it is. I mean, it sounds more like an analogy to something.
To something.
To something. The idea of perhaps integration. So first you're in a particular context of living and a certain level of knowledge, as you're interested in certain things, and then you come across something so radical to your thinking that it completely changes your perspective, and then it just takes a while to then integrate the rest of your knowledge before that. I know that you were talking about Leonard Peikoff's spiral theory of knowledge, Ayn Rand's implied spiral theory of knowledge. The idea that you've got all of this information. You know, in modern day they say, well, the more you know, the less you know.
Yeah, the more you learn, the less you know.
Yeah, if you have a really hodgepodge philosophy that isn't rational, sure, you're going to have a very disintegrated or misintegrated mind, to quote Leonard Peikoff's dim hypothesis. But you've got this wonderful philosophy by Ayn Rand, and objectivism is a really rational foundation. And with that, you can actually build upon your knowledge in a way that's consistent and non-contradictory.
So, first there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there is. So consider this. Consider the notions from physics and philosophy. So we sometimes get the two tables problem. This is mentioned in Introduction to Objectivist Epistemology. We see a table, piece of furniture. Easy, solid object. But then as physicists, or as modern philosophers, we learn that given the atomic structure of the underlying atoms of which the table is composed, the table is mostly empty space. But further, the table is an instance of materialism and commercialism. And if it's imported from a non-free country, it's an instance of injustice, sweatshops, inequity, capitalism, selfishness, you name it.
Hiss, hiss.
Has anybody run into the two tables idea of, you think you know what that is, but what's really going on there is something else altogether? I have some head nods from the live studio audience. But later, we realized that whatever our elevated, transcendent analysis of tables and the higher level concept of furniture, if you're living on Earth, you will return to seeing and using and valuing tables as tables. Now, there's a reason I bring up this metaphor, and it relates to everything, almost everything that was talked about this week, and especially Tao's closing talk. This notion of seeing something in an ordinary way, and then next in an elevated way, one that seems to change or even negate or wipe out the original conception you had. And then finally later, seeing it in a way that brings back the original object, but with an understanding that's more solid, more grounded, richer, more value-oriented than before. Might be silly to the well-studied objectivist, but let me ask you if you have ever encountered one or more of the following scenarios. Scenario number one.
All right, number one.
A friend.
Mm-hmm. A friend.
Might be that friend in the mirror. discovers the ideas of Ayn Rand. And he learns what a rational, virtuous, heroic, principled life looks like. And then he looks at the world, his family, his peers, his politicians, and he sees that people are not consistent, not 100% rational. They're not always honest, they're not always integrated or productive or just or proud. And some of us may still be at this stage of disappointment.
It's a lonely stage.
Disappointment and outrage and indignation. So first, there's the average, ordinary, mostly decent people in the world. Just good people, the kind of people who sold you a cup of coffee and the kind of people that you work with. First, there are average, ordinary men and women. And then there are no men. There are no women. All there are irrationalists, parasites, sheep, power lusters.
Altruists, second-handers, all of it. All the names.
Has anybody ever felt that feeling?
Yeah.
A few nods, a couple of shaking of the heads. No, I never made that mistake, never felt that. Good. Scenario number 2, and this will go quicker, the other two. A newcomer to Ayn Rand reads about Howard Rourke, and he sees Rourke in himself. He designs in his head a version of himself as an objectivist, as a hero, as Rourke. He may even change his name or dye his hair orange. It's funny, because I knew I was going to mention that, and Tal made the exact same point in his speech.
What was that, Ankar or Tal? I forget, but...
That was Tal.
Yeah.
No, maybe it was Ankar.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah.
He doesn't design any buildings, but he tells you all about how someday he will. Or worse, he would design buildings in a better world, but this world and these people are unworthy of him actually producing anything.
Yeah, you know, you get this, well, especially in the States, I don't know about in England or not, but, you know, you get people who say, I don't want to go into business because I'm just going to help the parasites and the looters.
They'll tax me, they'll take half of my money anyway, I'm just not going to start a business.
Right, and I'm going to have to go through all the bureaucracy of being an entrepreneur, and why bother with all of that?
And I'll be damned if I will help the state take my money and my effort. Yes, you will be damned if you don't help them, if you give up on your life. But we'll get to that. Jump to scenario. Yeah.
For the record, before scenario 3, I dyed my hair red before I discovered Ayn Rand. I just wanted to know.
First hander here.
Not a hard work thing.
Yeah. Although Amy and I have talked about how we have participated, been a part of each of these. Third scenario, quick one here. An enthusiastic objectivist accepts the task, the long journey of learning, understanding, and applying Ayn Rand's philosophy, her groundbreaking metaphysics, the primacy of existence, the epistemology of a rational, conceptual, volitional, free will, choice-laden consciousness, the ethics of rational self-interest and value creation, capitalism and politics, romantic realism and aesthetics. And then he encounters an ordinary bloke, a non-objectivist, one of our friends called them. And they meet up at a conference or school or a pub, coffee shop. And our enthusiastic, serious objectivist lays it all out over the course of an hour and a few pints.
You have to read Atlas Shrugged. You really have to. Here, read this now, read this now.
But more than
let me tell you
that,
about this, and let me tell you about that.
But more than that, I'm going to teach you the philosophy over the next hour.
Right.
I'm going to tell you why Ayn Rand was right.
And
the philosophy...
And by the way, all of your ideas about environmentalism, about altruism, about religion, they're wrong.
Everything you know is wrong. Now this is the philosophy that it took him days, weeks, months, probably years to accept and fully understand. And yet, he comes away from that pint, that coffee shop, disappointed, indignant, outraged, that this ordinary bloke he's talking to didn't find this brilliant presentation he just gave over 60 minutes completely compelling, and it made this guy change his mind or at least go out and buy 10 Ayn Rand books. What's wrong with this guy? I had a hard time learning objectivism, but he has the benefit of this conversation.
And the guy that you take out and try to convince might actually be somebody you've known for 15 years and you grew up with, you've been friends with all this time, and then you make the really horrible mistake of stopping being friends with that person and ceasing the friendship.
Well, that's intolerable.
Yeah, it's intolerable that they didn't listen to me about Ayn
I
Rand.
just gave him objectivism in 60 minutes and he didn't get it. Unacceptable.
But by the way, a lot of these scenarios Robert and I have experienced different levels of throughout life.
Not always, sometimes friends of ours. Or strangers.
Yeah.
So again, first there is ordinary, reasonable, sociable you who can talk to peers and share a pint. And then there is no you, no reasonable, sociable you.
And that's really, when I read that from there was it's a gut punch.
It's a gut punch.
And then you start questioning whether or not you can communicate to anybody.
It took me years to learn this stuff.
Then you're at work, and then some knucklehead, says, "Oh, we should have a new program for environmentalism or for CRT or however." Great idea, and you're.
Let me tell him in 5 minutes why I disagree with that, and he better get it in 5 minutes.
Or worse, you don't even know what to say or exactly where to start, because and you don't. Ayn Rand, when she was growing up, Harry Binswanger was talking about this in this wonderful, basically lecture by him from a long time ago called Highlights and Sidelights. And Ayn Rand grew up learning. I think she had a degree in history, and she was really kind of ashamed of herself in a lot of ways because she couldn't articulate without either being extremely shy and bashful, or without getting really, really upset and tearing into people. And so she was really trying to figure out how to communicate in a way that was actually, persuasive. So yeah, that's,
So I'm just going to take just a second, because we got to see where we're at with the super chat.
Yeah.
So we have super chat going on, sure enough.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, which is really tiny on this phone. I'm so used to having all of them. I'm spoiled for all of my equipment. Let me fix this real quick. And Chandlar, is Chandler? Did he change his profile? Chandlar is in for $2. Thank you very much for that. Apollo Zeus is on board. Apollo Zeus, thank you for that.
Thank you.
And is in for $2 and says go name. Jonathan Honig is in. I hope you heard the intro. I did pay tribute. If this is the weekly objective, we totally should have karaoke'd at the beginning. Apologize for not making that happen.
Well,
but
we might do it later.
instead, we are going to give away this beautiful guitar as a raffle item to somebody in the lucky audience here. And yes, it really does work.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, Jonathan, in for a big $9.99. Shadowblade in for £1.75. If I even understand British money after a week. And Bonnie, oh my gosh, Bonnie is on hand, says, thanks for the thoughts and pictures. Bonnie, you're the best. You are here in spirit with us.
Yes.
She's been communicating with us all. Bonnie is one of the best.
She is.
She really is. So, for each of these three scenarios, we should, and we do, eventually find the mountain once again.
And what does that mean?
And done properly, the journey provides us with a deeper and richer and more value-laden understanding. So let me just sketch that out about the first instance. For better or for worse, we do live, well, this might be controversial. For better or for worse, we do live in an ordinary world. And what I mean by that is we do not live in a utopia. I don't mean a communist, socialist utopia, I mean an objectivist utopia. We don't live under freedom, we don't live under pure capitalism. But here's the thing. We also don't live in a dystopia.
Yeah.
We live in a world full of mostly decent people. If you've ever gone to a coffee shop and trusted the people behind the counter not to poison your coffee, I'll go a step further to actually make you a decent cup of coffee that's worth a few pence. You know, we live in a world of mostly good people and a non-trivial number of really bad people. And then we read the fountainhead and we discover what we can and should be. And then suddenly we see a world in which most people fall short. Many people are substantially irrational. And some people are unquestionably downright evil. But the third stage, which has value-laden, passionate pursuers of life on earth, we should reach as quickly as possible, is to see that we are surrounded by miracles, by the products of producers, the products of the mind, and actualized through business, productive work, mass production, the division of labor.
Yeah, not mystical miracles.
No,
but,
that's true.
yeah,
Not everybody has heard my
reality-based
show.
ones.
When I say we are surrounded by miracles, not least of which is ourselves, what I mean are the products of modern civilization, the products of the mind, products of the division of labor, products which, by myself on a deserted island, I couldn't even imagine, much less produce. And yet, we are surrounded by this stuff and the people who make it happen all day, every day. And that should never be taken for granted. Just walk down the streets of any big city. Or just consider what an internet connection and a small amount of hardware brings you. We are surrounded by miracles.
And we're just surrounded by decent people. You go downstairs and the people at the desk of David Game College will tell you where to go. And they'll be helpful and get what you need. And
usually when
it's
people
nice.
tell me where to go, it's in a good way. So first, there are ordinary, reasonable, mostly virtuous people. And then there are no virtuous people. And then there are.
yeah. You know, I'm going to jump in here, especially in the scenario number 3 with the person trying to convince their friend in an hour that Ayn Rand was right. One thing I do because I do actually have a lot of non-objectivist friends, and they might be a little familiar with Ayn Rand, but they're really super nice people. And what I do is I give them what I call virtue compliments. So, you know, we have Ayn Rand's virtues. We know if you and especially if you introspect and you understand how those apply to your life, whether it's, you know, honesty or productivity or pride and taking pride in who you are and you being your own top value. I can go to my friend and say, you know, I really appreciate how honest you were with that. I really appreciate how, you know, what tenacity and drive and perseverance you have. You know, you really embrace productivity. You really go out in the world and make the world your own, and I really admire that. And so what I'm doing is I'm giving them the words, I'm giving them the descriptions, and I'm also incentivizing them to actually read Ayn Rand because
Yes.
they know me and they know what I'm about and they know what I do. And you know, Robert and I have run for over 10 years Great Lakes Subjectivists in the Metro Detroit area. Everybody knows what I do, even at work, actually. I do, to some people I tell them, well, I run a philosophy study group. But you know, but Ayn Rand's name always comes up, and so people know, and people are okay with it. But yeah, giving people compliments about, you know, recognizing the virtues in them and describing it for them and helping them with this different kind of morality, because, you know, all they know about morality is what not to do, what they should avoid, and that they should have an obligation to obey whatever it is that whoever wants them to do. So to give them the words and the meaning and the joy of actually having something that they can look at and say, you know, I am virtuous, is a wonderful gift that you can give to somebody. So there you are.
Excellent. I'll have more to say about that maybe when we do some Q&A relating your idea of compliments to the idea of forgiveness. Make it substantive. But first, we have another super chat from Jonathan Honig. Thank you very much for that. Since I'm taking a super chat moment, I should also say, if anybody watching this live at home, heck, here live in the big audience, say hello, big audience. I love having fun. You should stand on the table every now and then. You should have the spotlight on you. I love this. But anybody who isn't already a member of the Ayn Rand Center UK, this is your chance. Don't browse away from the window where you're watching this. Open another window if you're on your phone. Wait till we're done. But do go to AynRandCenter.co.uk. There's a link right at the top that says membership, or follow the link that will appear in the chat. You can make that happen. And be one of us. Don't you want to be one of the cool kids? You know you do. But seriously, you can support the work that the center does and support weeks like the amazing week we just had. All sorts of intellectual and emotional nutrition that you need, that we needed. Thank you so much for that. Now, as for the second and the third scenarios I discussed, there's a lot to say, but I just want to plant this seed. You, each of us, you deserve, maybe we should do applause again, you deserve enormous credit for giving these ideas, this philosophy a hearing, and learning them, and understanding them, and to whatever extent you have, practicing these ideas, which I'm sure are making your lives better. You deserve the applause. Amy and I will applaud you. You are the best. And all of you out there, you know who you are. Every single one of you, except that one guy, you know who I'm talking about.
That's a joke.
Someday I'll actually admit that there is no one guy out there. But if you say everyone, you're like, oh, he's not really judging everyone. There is the one guy out there who does not deserve that. But seriously, to the extent that you have taken this philosophy from theory to practice, you are to be applauded. It's a long, hard journey. Yeah. And it's going to be long and hard for the next guy. The next guy you meet, the guy you try to bring on board. It's not going to be easy for him either. And that doesn't mean he's going to be humble and say, gee, these are ideas that you're talking about are kind of hard, but I will humbly try to adopt them. That's not what it's going to look like. Don't expect it to look like that. He's going to fight you. He's going to resist. He's going to say, what about this? What about that? Ayn Rand was crazy. You don't know what you're talking about.
You know, one time in one of our meetings at Great Lakes Objectivists, we had a friend of a friend come over, and he was quite acerbic, and he said, Ayn Rand was a nut job. That was the first thing that came out of his mouth. And by the time he left with us, when we softened him up a bit and kind of made him see that, because he had a lot of abstract ideas, a lot of crazy floating concepts in his mind about what objectivists or Ayn Rand fans were, and he left with a gift in his hand of the virtue of selfishness. And he left with the book. And
it took a few minutes of him saying, well, what about this? What about that? Before we finally got him to say, oh yeah, that answer is kind of making me think.
Yeah.
Some people who say, you have no duty or responsibility to anybody who is that caustic.
No.
And you can assume in advance they're not going to be open to reason.
Right.
But there are surprises out there, and if it is enjoyable for you, if it is of value, and if you have very low expectations, you can have those conversations. So I have 3 takeaways as we get to the half-hour point, and we'll go on as long as you want us to. If anybody has any questions, comments, derisive insults, whatever it is. But I have 3 takeaways that I want to give you. All of you in the large audience and you folks at home or on your bike, wherever you're taking this in. Number 1, many of us do these things. We make these assumptions about this all too mixed world that we live in. And we make these mistakes regarding ordinary, decent people. But that third level of understanding, that destination of knowledge and wisdom and graciousness, is reachable. Number 2, just by knowing that this is a thing that happens, you can accelerate that process. And you can make the side effects of that second stage less of a disvalue.
Yeah, especially the second stage, and you can kind of stop yourself and say, wait a minute, I do need to do some introspection here. And yeah.
And number 3, if you don't get anything from this, number 3, your takeaway is the crucial thing to focus on throughout this journey is precisely values. Your actual, real life, real world, here and now values. You are here to live a life. Your actions in support of your values, and most especially your productive, creative actions, these are primary. And if that's your focus, production, creation, building a life, making things happen, it's substantially easier, if that's what you're doing, to see the value and the virtues, however mixed, in the individuals with whom you engage, people with whom you work, those with which you choose to share a pint. And to see the value, once again, in the world. The whole magnificent, bountiful, adventurous, technological, opportunity-filled, and value-laden world. First, there is a benevolent universe. Then there is no benevolence. And then there is. Now let's get to it.
Yep.
So if anybody has any questions, comments, in the live studio audience, bring them on. I'll take another look at the chat just to see if we have any well-paid super chat questions. We have a lot of comments and no questions. So does anybody have any questions or any thoughts they would like to share?
Yeah, or just so you know, so the gentleman who just arrived, if you want to give us a piece of paper with your name on it.
We are raffling off the guitar.
Raffling off this beautiful guitar.
It is kind of beautiful.
It is actually.
Yes.
Robert, he changed the action on it, he restrung it.
It's actually a very cheap guitar, but I have modified it.
He filed down the fretboard, which is really important because you don't want to get, stung by the frets.
Because I'm traveling this week, we don't live in London, England. I had a guitar shipped here to play, but we're not taking it back with us. We're giving it to you, somebody in this live studio audience. So yes, we will raffle it off. But first, does anybody have any questions about the topic at hand or anything else they were thinking about over the course of this week? Ayn Rand Center UK and Ayn Rand Institute. Bring it on. Otherwise, I'm just gonna pick it, or Amy's going to. Amy, you need to pick the name out of the bucket because the gal always does that.
But before we do, I just want to, before we get into any questions, I just want to kind of recap in my own mind what we were just talking about, the scenarios. The first scenario I would consider to be the angry person, the person who's kind of stunted by this revelation that there are so many irrational people out there. So you have the angry person. Scenario number 2 is the idealist. So he's going to dye his hair orange. He's also not going to engage with the world. He's going to
transcendent idealist, not the way objectivists use idealist.
Right. Yeah. So in other words, he's disconnected from reality. He's in his head in your head all the time. I was like this.
Too good for this world.
Very much so. And then they get to the point where they become so upset because they can't engage with the world, or they don't have that kind of self-assertiveness and self-esteem where they can say, I am living well. I'm efficacious in living, and that they become very angry and very upset, and they say the world doesn't deserve me. So.
Yep.
Yep.
I think I'll dye my hair blue.
Right.
Well, that's the song lyric. I guess dye my hair orange is really the objective version.
The third one is the friend. Yeah, if you want to pass around those little slips to the newcomers.
A couple latecomers, feel free to put your name on a slip if you want a chance to win this fine guitar that actually works.
We are raffling off this beautiful guitar. And of course, with this raffle, now, none of the raffle tickets are cost anything. So if you would like to, just in honor of all of this, pay a little extra donation.
Whoever wins, I'm going to throw in a bonus.
Yeah.
The bonus is this guitar strap that did not come with the guitar. This was brought from Detroit and shipped from Amazon, which means it was dirt cheap. And a well-worn guitar pick of your choice.
Yes.
We have the robertnasir.com guitar pick, so you always remembered where to find us. We have the Ron Toole and the Capitalists guitar pick with the art design from our album what was the name of our album? True Tales of Dereliction.
Dereliction. That wasn't our.
We were the musicians. We did not write the songs. I even have one of our anniversary guitar picks.
Yes.
If you want something a little more romantic. I don't know how romantic it is to have a picture of us, but Amy and Robert's
It's a cute
21st,
picture. Oh, thank you very much.
21st anniversary and jam session. You're like, why would you have guitar picks for your wedding anniversary? And the answer is we have live music, whatever we do.
Yes.
Apparently, including our podcast. So yes, we get everybody's name in the bucket there if you want to be in on it.
And while we're waiting for some newcomers to put their names into the bucket, why don't you go ahead and grace us with a beautiful song?
It can do this. It's not too bad for $72.
No.
I guess it was 80 something if you count the shipping. You know, we might get a copyright strike off YouTube. That could be trouble. Do we monetize these podcasts, or is it strictly super chat?
Yeah, we might.
Oh, goodness.
Now,
Okay.
they may take away our monetization. We only get the super chat for this one. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
I should have played something that I made up, except for I haven't really made much up.
All right. Well, that's very beautiful, Robert. That's a bar chord for anybody.
These are the chords that you play when you're in a bar.
No, it's where you put your index finger across.
Oh, that. Yes. Yep. And you can just, you don't have to learn how to play guitar at all. You can just bar the strings. Here's a song for you. I have a whole song that goes like that, I really do. So you can do with it whatever you like, or give it to your nephew. You always want to learn to play the guitar, and this guy gave one away. So do we have all the names in the bucket?
I do believe so.
Before we do the raffle, does anybody have any comments, questions, anything you would like to say about this awesome week provided by the Ayn Rand Center UK and the Ayn Rand Institute, or anything about the discussion that we've had? Yes?
You spent some time with the speaker corners, or do you feel?
I did. That was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Speaker's Corner at Hyde Park. We made that, and of course Tom Nowak really was the star of that show.
Yeah, he was.
And I hope we make him famous here, or embarrassed, or both. And that was great. But yes, Rosie invited me to get up there and speak as well, and it was fun to give my usual spiel. We were next door to the guy who said, "Men, don't spill your seed." And it's amazing the things we'll get up and soapbox about. Of course, we had all sorts of religious people,
Yeah,
because Armageddon is coming.
right.
Armageddon is getting on with us.
That's right, the bombs are gonna drop.
The bombs are going to drop, and the bugles or the horns will sound, and they've been about to sound just about every year since I was born, and I was born an awfully long time ago, so I think that might not actually be true. But that was a good time.
That was great, and I played devil's advocate. And
You did. You played devil's advocate. You gave me a hard time.
Yeah, I was a
I
total
was say,
mystic.
hard times keeps coming up, but yes,
Yeah.
you gave me trouble over that.
Yeah, I was super into religion, and I loved my Jesus. Jesus, my good friend Jesus.
And what did he ever do for you?
Well, he built the aqueducts and indoor plumbing, and
You think of
that
the
was the
Romans.
Romans.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
All right.
Michael Bryan reference.
Do we have all the names in the
I
bucket?
think we do,
Is it
actually.
time to raffle the guitar? This could be the climax of the show here, because somebody's going to. Not only that, we brought the cardboard boxes shipped in. You will get the cheap Amazon guitar strap here, and the guitar pick of your choice. Here we go. We've never had a giveaway. This is kind of
Make
cool.
sure this is folded right.
Of course, we don't usually have a live studio or live site remote. A live
Can I have
remote audience.
a drum roll from the audience? All right, and the winner
Of the guitar that
beautiful
is
guitar,
no longer my guitar because it now belongs to.
I think it's Matthew.
Hooray!
So much. I wish
One
we
less
had-
thing I have to get on the airplane coming home. So thank you very much for joining us. This has been
Oh,
the Weekly Objective.
yes, and do we have any questions, any more questions from the audience?
Yes.
Ayn Rand once said in a Q&A that you should never try and convert your parents to
Yes.
objectivism. Do you think that applies to all family members, like your kids, your nephews and nieces? Is it different with family compared with friends?
It is, and it depends a lot on the role that they played in the family. Her whole point was your parents can never see you as anything but somebody they nurtured, that they were
Right.
responsible for and taught all of life's lessons to. So at least I would say that that might apply to their elders or grandparents and probably to aunts and uncles. It's very hard for people a generation older than you. It's not about the 10 years or the 20 years or even 30 years, it's about the generation. For them to
Right.
say, this young whippersnapper who never knew anything and had to be taught everything about life has life lessons to give me that will shake up everything I know.
Yeah,
It's possible.
It's hard
Very
to
unlikely.
be a role model for your role model growing up. So
And it gets
Yeah.
into part of what we talked about, because what we had to say was as much about psychology as it was about philosophy. You would think, well, if I'm right and they're wrong, then a rational conversation should make them see that. And there's a sense in which that's true, except there are 10 different psychological roadblocks, and not just resistance, and I don't want to hear it, but even their ability to see you in the role of somebody to teach them not how to bake a cake or how to drive to the theater, but life lessons. That's a real challenge. And I think Ayn Rand made the point that with regard to your own parents, it can even be disrespectful to
Yeah.
do that to them because it takes a certain amount of force and, Mom, you're wrong. Or even if you do it very gently and kindly and rationally, it's very difficult for those roles to allow for that. So my answer would
Yeah.
be, it depends on the roles within the family, but definitely not your parents and probably not your elders.
yeah, and I actually got my mom to read Atlas Shrugged. Bless her soul.
Yeah,
She's,
and she
gone now,
was,
but,
she was sympathetic to it. She was kind of like, I get
but
it, yeah, that's
saw
good.
she saw it more of as a romance. Anything
And it was.
philosophical.
The romances
There
in Atlas
was,
Shrugged are
actually, it's to her
amazing.
credit, in a way, it's to her credit. Some people don't see romance in Atlas Shrugged.
Well, there is the fact that Dagny Taggart slept around so much.
Oh yeah, not one, not two, three.
I get that. People come to me and they're like, Dagny, really, she should have been more faithful. Now, it's 2022, but even in 1957, the idea that a woman only, in her entire life, only had 3 lovers, each of which she was totally faithful to, yeah, she really slept around a lot. Do you know any women who have only had 3 lovers? Not that there's anything wrong with that. And
Anyway,
yes.
so that was a little bit of a tangent, but
I like
all right.
tangents.
Any more questions?
Any trivia questions?
Or any?
Apparently, we know a lot of trivia. So it seems.
It seems.
I should explain to the
Try to
at-home
stump us,
audience
please.
that they had a trivia contest at the pub, the big pub night last night. They had a trivia contest, and Amy came in second place.
Not intentionally.
And she won a hardcover copy of Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand, which we already have probably half a dozen copies of on the shelf.
Well,
But it's beautiful and it's new and
I mean, not only do we have Opar at home, we have an Opar that Robert has with Leonard Peikoff's signature in it. I mean, what's better than that? And then we also have my own copy from the 90s, which I laminated with tape and, I tried to take very good care of.
she brought one of her own into the relationship. I was good with that, it's okay. My copy is still the man's copy. Actually, I don't even know what, but yeah, I do love having one. We even got
Very silly.
the 5-chapter manuscript copy from when he was still writing it. That was
yeah.
cool.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, so anyway, as you were saying, yes, who won the trivia contest?
Oh yeah, I said who came in second place, didn't I? So if anybody has any trivia questions, Amy's very good at that stuff. And yes, I did win the trivia contest.
Yes, you did.
But maybe it was rigged because they used some of my equipment for the grading.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I figured out some way to program ARI's website and
Well,
my computer. Anyway,
I've
that was great
I've already
fun.
told Tal that next time there is a trivia contest, we're not entering it because then
Why?
we win all the time.
I'm good with that. Why would you hate the good for being the good?
I was not there, I would have done okay.
Mary Lee might have. Because,
Oh, yes.
because remember, we did the trivia contest in 2019 at OCON. We did not win. I don't even think we
That's
came
true,
close to winning. That
actually.
was a tough one.
And that was one of the group things where they had people in groups.
That's true.
So it depended on how many really intelligent people you had who were very, very knowledgeable. If you had them all, then you were going to win.
That's a good point. We were playing a collectivist version of it. No wonder we didn't win.
There you
If
go.
it had been each man for himself, the way it should be,
Yeah,
then I'm sure we would have been much better.
you know, and I just gotta say, you know, I remarked to a couple of gentlemen who are in the audience earlier that it really takes a lot to just even more discover Ayn Rand's ideas, and it takes even more effort and more, especially introspection, to take those ideas, apply them to your life, and become better for it. I think, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, if you go to a conference, say any conference, I mean, even if it's like on digital marketing or whatever, everyone is sort of like, rah, rah, aren't we so happy to be in digital marketing? You don't get, I don't see that kind of, and I know people don't want to be phony. I know, I get it. They don't want to become enthusiastic to the point of looking cultish. But really, I think that, you know, as objectivists, I think people interested in Ayn Rand's philosophy really should be proud of themselves. And you should give yourself a lot of credit because it's very difficult. This is, you know, the first and best rational philosophy that ever existed, other than, say, you know, obviously Ayn Rand gave a lot of credit to Aristotle, but really, it's quite astounding and quite a feat.
Oh,
So-
we have another super chat.
Oh, let's see.
Well, it's Bonnie again, who's in for $10 and says,
Thank you, Bonnie.
she says, this was 3 shows in one. A huge shout out and the biggest thank you in the world to Rozzy
Ah.
and all his minions.
Yay! Give it up for Roger.
Thank you for that, Bonnie. Very much appreciated, and you are still the best.
Yes.
So I'm just going to repeat what I said. Oh, wait, I promised I would say something about compliments.
Oh, yes.
We did an episode on compliments. We did a whole episode on paying compliments. In this regard, Amy is the expert. I mean, we both know the concepts, but she's really good at it. And Amy made the point earlier that when you pay compliments, she pays them on virtues. She's essentially selling philosophy to people because when she compliments, she's complimenting their integrity, their productiveness, their virtues. You know, that was a very just thing that you did. You know, I love your pride in your work. And we did an episode on compliments, but we also did one on trust and forgiveness. And the common denominator there is that forgiveness, for example, should be earned in advance. You forgive people because they deserve it, not because they did something wrong, but you're cutting them slack. And the point is, in relation to this evening's discussion, when you take action in the real world, if you're going to act like an objectivist, that's not a parody, and it shouldn't be stiff and artificial. These concepts apply to things like trust, concepts like forgiveness, concepts like paying compliments. I have a bit of a disagreement with the folks who are looking at producing the Atlas Shrugged mini-series because they want to modernize it. And I don't mind if it's brought up to date, but they want to modernize the dialogue. And I absolutely believe that the dialogue in the book, as written, can be delivered in a natural way that sounds exactly like somebody in 2022. It depends on the actor, depends on their style, it depends on how you edit, what you cut out, what you leave in. But my point is that you can actually act like the people in Atlas Shrugged without parodying or stiffly acting like the people in Atlas Shrugged. What I love about the book is that the characters are extraordinary, but they're also entirely realistic. And it helps that I've read the book so many times, I don't know how many times I've read it. And you get to the point where you realize you can read these lines the way that you live. And it's one of the things I love about Ayn Rand is that her characters are far more relatable, I think, than some people realize. Now, I've said before in regard to the Fountainhead, The next time you reread The Fountainhead, and if you've only read it once, I have to say it's a book that bears rereading. It's almost better the second time you read it than it was the first. But the next time that you read it, The Fountainhead, read the first 2 lines, and then hold on to those 2 lines as you read the rest of the book. And it's a whole different experience. There are people who read The Fountainhead and they think of the way Gary Cooper presented Howard Rourke, as kind of grim, kind of serious, a little morose, or the stage production they did in New York of the angry young man, Howard Rourke. Read the first 2 lines of the book and remember those lines as you go through the rest of the book, and you will find everything else makes more sense. Everything else is far more realistic, and even the language and the lines, when Ayn Rand wrote dialogue nobody really says, she absolutely wrote dialogue that people really say. She left out the ums and the ahs, and also the words that are like ums and ahs. But the first 2 lines in The Fountainhead are, Howard Rourke laughed. He stood naked on the edge of a cliff. As you read The Fountainhead, remember, this is a man who, he got kicked out of college. He didn't take it as a blow. He took it, oh, this is a development. It was something that had to happen. I'm not surprised it happened. I'm ready for my next thing. I really stayed as he tells the dean, I really stayed here too long. I don't have anything left to learn. He's ready for the next adventure, he's ready to go out and design buildings. He's already designing buildings. He's got stacks of buildings in his desk at home. He's got stacks of buildings that weren't that good in the trash. He always says, well, at least my botches end up in my own trash can. This is a man of enormous passion, and a man who loves life. He says, why did you become an architect? It's because I love this earth. There were things I didn't like, I wanted to change them. So the next time you read The Fountainhead, the next time you read anything by Ayn Rand, Howard Rourke laughed. This is benevolence. He stood naked on the edge of a cliff. This is passion. And I hope that our little discussion tonight about the 3 things we often do help you get a little more power, a little more passion, a little more fun with these ideas. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us for the Weekly Objective, and Life on Earth, and 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir, and Amy Nasir. Thank you for everything. And that's a wrap.